Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koutou te ina nahi, te ina ene, me te apopo. Ko tēnei taku mihi nā tangawhena o tō rohi nei, i ngā iwi, i ngā mana, i ngā reo, e rau rangatira mā. Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. In this session, Morgan and I will talk about two aspects of the public finance system in Aotearoa, the myth and the reality. Both aspects are critical in responding to the poly-crisis that we are hearing about today. We need to fully understand government's unique ability to invest in and shape an economy, but we also need to be equipped to challenge the pernicious and frankly dangerous myths about public finance, myths that have taken on almost biblical status. The doctrine of responsible fiscal management has been built on these myths. The Public Finance Act has institutionalised the neoliberal concept that government's role in an economy must be kept small. And the myth that a small government is a good government and a good government is a small government is echoed in this Act through the legislated principles of responsible fiscal management. By reining in government spending, taxing and borrowing, these principles allow, or so the theory goes, more room for private sector activity. Yes, that's another myth. However, the biggest myth of all is that government is like a household. And despite your applause, it is and remains widely accepted. Why? Because it just sounds right. It's just plain common sense. And so the metaphors are repeated ad nauseum. Just like a household, the government shouldn't max out its credit cards. It must balance its budget. It must live within its means, and it must save for a rainy day. Bluntly, the metaphor of a government as a household is wrong, dangerous and insidious and must be reputed outright. It is a lie and it is totally without any economic or theoretical underpinnings. Firstly, a government can borrow without collateral. Unlike you and me, it can borrow without having to take out a mortgage or provide any collateral. It literally writes an IOU on a piece of paper, probably an electronic piece of paper, stating, I will repay the holder $1 million signed to the New Zealand government. That's it. Secondly, the government can refinance these IOUs indefinitely. When you want to cash in your IOU, the government will borrow a different $1 million from someone else, and the new IOU that it writes to the new person just replaces the old IOU to you, which it then rips up. No household can do any of that. Thirdly, a government can borrow at more favourable interest rates than you, me, or any other business or entity in the nation. And by the way, the government also has the power to levy taxes and to change them at will. No household can do that. Another pernicious myth is that government spending is inherently bad and inefficient because of the absence of the profit motive. In contrast, the private sector, with its underpinning profit driver, is better at controlling spending and is so more efficient. Yes, there are many examples to support this myth, but there are equally many other examples that run counter to this myth. The US health system, for example. Within economic theory, both old and new, there is nothing inherent within either the government or the private sector that makes either any more or less efficient than the other. And another comfort-inducing homily, yes, a myth, that is often heard is that there is no magic money tree. Indeed, we heard it last month in the Finance Minister's budget speech, no less. It may not be magic, but spoiler alert, yes, there is indeed a money tree. I'm not joking. It is called the Crown Settlement Account, but I'll leave my colleague Morgan to take you through that. Importantly, it is precisely these differences between the government and the household and in debunking all these other myths that proves government can have power and influence over economic activity. Governments do have the ability to invest in things to deliver on community well-being both now and into the future. But such power or influence is an anathema to the neoliberal doctrine of small government. And so alongside these myths, you will also likely hear the footsteps of the twin ogres, inflation and debt. Inflation will become rampant with these irresponsible and reckless spending, and our grandchildren will be saddled with the legacy of debt. Both require good economic analysis to counter, in contrast to the financial rhetoric. Yes, spending may result in inflation, but only when spending exceeds the capacity of the real productive resources available to the nation. It's called economics. This basket, it's important, this basket or kete of productive resources includes, and it's not money, includes our natural environment, including our land, fresh waters, oceans, Papatūānuku, and the entire Earth systems, as we heard from Mike earlier. And included in our basket of productive resources, the physical bricks and mortar, buildings and associated infrastructure, like pipes, transport, communications and fibre networks. And also in that kete of resources, our people and their communities, their unique skills, their experiences, their knowledge and mātauranga. We need to ensure the capacity of this kete is sufficient to sustain our economic activity. An example of inflation would be government spending to fund everybody to get 3 GP visits without ensuring there is an adequate supply of suitably trained GPs to realise those visits. To be clear, the spending is not inflationary as long as there are sufficient productive resources available to support the corresponding economic activity. It may sound academic, but it is different. This kete of real resources is the real constraint on economic activity, not inflation. Their capacity of these productive resources, it's what determines the government's ability to help deliver on the aspirations of our people and communities. And of course, there's that second ogre, debt, that I now turn to. Well, I'll let Morgan explain the mechanics of government spending. I, unsurprisingly, want to focus on the economics rather than the financial rhetoric. The true debt or burden that we will pass to our mokopuna and their mokopuna is reflected in that productive resource kete of the nation. The responsible question to ask is this kete a fit for purpose legacy to leave? For example, we could leave a degraded, depleted natural environment that can't sustain human well-being or enable a flourishing economy, or indeed any economy at all. Or we could leave degraded or inadequate community and physical infrastructure, like unsafe drinking water or polluting wastewater systems, or transport networks lacking resilience against weather networks, or a crumbling health system leaving people without timely treatment. That is real economic debt. But we are told that governments must build up a financial surplus, and these rainy day savings are prioritised over investing in the things that communities need. I don't know about you, but my emergency rainy day grab bag doesn't contain much cash. What does it include? It includes food, cooking equipment, drinking water, warm clothing, very important for today, a tent and medical supplies. And as many communities in Aotearoa have increasingly found in recent years, it is access to this kete of resources that is way more critical in any rainy day than a stash of cash. In summary, the government has a unique ability to invest in public goods such as health, housing and transport, to invest in social, community and physical infrastructure to support resilience now and into the future, to address inequality and reduce poverty, to leave a kete that is fit for purpose legacy for our mokopuna. To do so, we must unleash one of the most powerful tools in the government's toolkit, fiscal policy. Sorry for the words. Fiscal policy, otherwise known as spending, borrowing and taxing. We must replace, and for the politicians or anybody else in the room, this one's important, we must replace the principles of responsible fiscal management with the principles of responsible economic governance. Such principles would provide oversight ensuring economic activity operates upon two pillars, or two po. The first pillar is a kete of resources comprising healthy natural environment and the social and physical infrastructure that needs to meet the needs of our people and communities. And the second pillar is a social floor below which no one in Aotearoa should fall, including having sufficient to eat, a warm, dry and healthy home, and access to education, health and other support services. Together, those two pillars are the supports for a te treaty-centred Aotearoa with resilient communities, a productive, prosperous economy, and will help fulfil our responsibility of kaitiaki, of the inheritance that we received. That is, being a good ancestor. So now I would indeed like to hand over to Morgan Edwards to tell us about this money tree. Kia ora.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to talk about the not-so-magic money tree, because this is how it works. And this is new knowledge that has not been looked at for 40 years. And here we are today. And I want to let you know about the Crown Settlement Account. So we can think of all core Crown government spending. So this is health, education, social development. All of that expenditure comes from this thing called the Crown Settlement Account. And there are two things I want you to know about the Crown Settlement Account for today. The first is that the Crown Settlement Account can go negative to meet any and all payment requirements from the New Zealand government. Oh, by the way, here's the Crown Settlement Account. This is how we think about the institutions of government finance, etc. Two things. First thing, the Crown Settlement Account can go negative to meet any and all payment obligations. And indeed, it's gone negative for 7 out of 17 bond maturities. That's debt repayments, between 1998 and 2020. This is an example of that. So there are no financial constraints on the ability of the New Zealand government to meet its payment obligations. And this data has not been made public until my OIA request last year. And now it is public. But it gets better, because the second thing I want you to know is that all government spending is money creation. And we can see this process in action. So this is half-hourly government spending data. And as you can see there, government spending is money creation. Positive numbers are created money, and negative numbers are tax withdrawals. But as you can see there, those payments weren't stopped by the massively overdrawn or negative balance of the Crown Settlement Account. It didn't stop the government from spending. So at the start of the day there, negative $2.4 billion, and then at the end of the day, negative $2.5 billion. That did not stop the government from spending at all, despite conventionally what we'd see as running out of money. So these are really, really important to understand. And of course, it doesn't mean to say that we can have whatever we want. As Ganesh has pointed out, these are real resource constraints. But as we can see by looking at the data, there is no financial constraint on the New Zealand government. And of course, to have a mature conversation about the reality of public finance, we have to disregard the myth that the government is like a household. The government is a money creator, and it creates money when it spends. But of course, this is not to say that taxation is not important. Tax is really important. It controls the use of the currency or enforces its use. It's what we want to achieve as society, is what a good tax policy does. And of course, for the government to tax, it first has to spend anyway, and the complicated stuff of that we can talk about later. But of course, don't just take my word for it. Take the Reserve Bank's word for it. Because we talk about this infinite capacity, which is essentially what we're saying, financially. This, and you may have seen it before, but it did go by in a flash, this is the infinity symbol. And this is from the Reserve Bank. So they understand parts of this, but not all of it. But they certainly understand that they have an unlimited capacity to produce New Zealand dollars. And again, there is a wee bit of complication here, but it's talking about the consolidated government sector. But again, we can talk about that later. And again, if you needed more proof, suppose in black and white, this quote here is from the Reserve Bank's annual report. So what does this mean? What is the so what? What can we do to enhance our communities and to enhance our understanding of how this works? Well, we can do everything. You have seen here today the evidence and the proof of the pudding of my PhD research. Here we can inform our understandings by moving away from the fact that the government, or from the idea that the government is like a household. The government is a very special actor in the economy, and to unleash public finance, we have to understand exactly how it works. And of course, the difficulty lies not in the new ideas, but in escaping from the old ones. And that's something I want to leave with you here today. So thank you very much.